Hey guys, Jarretman back with some more 500 Zoom. Another short pool midweek, midday session. Maybe one time we'll get some playable hands. We'll see. Could just be folding this whole video. That'd be a fun video. Some people like to see what I fold though. See, a hand like this is just a fold versus that open size in those positions. This one we could call low frequency, but on a 34, we're just gonna fold it. Don't hate calling the ace-queen off here, being slightly deeper and a weaker player being in the big blind, but versus the 3-bet, I think this is slightly too weak to cold 4 with these positions. If I was on the button, or if this was cutoff versus button, then I think we would cold 4 it more often. Might be a low frequency cold 4 bet. I think on 10-10-8, it's just a really good board for the button, despite it being really connected, because we have a 10x advantage, and there's a lot of different strategies you can do. But betting frequently for a small size can't be too bad, and we're slightly deeper here, which makes me want to 4-bet this slightly more. I'm only going to go to 3x still. It's not like we're 250 big blinds deep. We're only 150 big blinds effective. Jack 10 suited, we roll a call. We'll be mostly 3-betting it, or at least 3-betting it some of the time. But definitely calling it some of the time. So normally a very good board for me. However, I think with these positions and these stack depths, he's going to have probably all the ace-king, while I might just call some ace-king pre-flop. So if anything, I think he has more ace-king. I think he has 10s pure. I think he has jacks pure. I think he has queens pure. And I think he might even have ace-king pure. Where I'm not going to 4-bet all the ace-king being this deep. This isn't necessarily what should be happening pre-flop, but I think that's probably what is happening. But we have enough equity to call versus 10s, jacks, and queens, or even a hand like queen jack suited. So obviously we're not folding the flop yet, especially not versus that size. Neither player really has much 9x. That card is basically a brick. His bluffs need to come from like ace 4 suited, ace 5 suited. I don't think the non-flush draw versions of those stab this flop really. Maybe he was bluffing the flop with like pocket 9s, which now has a straight. He could maybe be stabbing the flop with ace-queen, but I really think ace-queen checks the flop back. So I don't think there's much value in ever bluffing my hand. I think if we do want to bluff, I have king 10 suited and king jack suited. Really, really weird spot if he jams the river. I think I'm going to fold. It's so hard to find bluffs here for him in a spot where he's going to perceive me to have like a ton of ace-king, which, I do have a decent amount of ace-king. He has a ton of ace-king. He's a ton of queens, jacks, 10s, and we win. Okay. So he just had some sort of stab on the flop, it looks like. 7s. Yeah, okay. Just taking a stab. King 6 suited will mix from this position. Ace 6 suited, we can throw in the 3-bet low frequency. I think these types of aces usually prefer to call mostly. 3-bet low frequency, but we'll throw it in there. We'll start with the range check on table 1. Even versus recreationals, I think this board is a board that we should be doing a lot of checking on. I can make the argument for betting small a lot as well, but... So table 2, we do want a checking range in these positions, and it's built around my type of hand. So we're going to bet a size that ace highs are going to fold on table 1. Okay. When he snap calls, I'm really weighting him more towards diamonds, 7x, 5x. 7x would mostly bet the flop. Pairs that aren't on the board. And maybe some hands like ace 4, ace 6. I don't really like bluffing this spot. Can maybe even check call. Yeah, I'm really thinking about check calling actually. Table 2, we're gonna bet now. I don't think we want to reopen for an overbet here. I think just a big bet with our overpairs and 10x that did check the flop makes the most sense. We can have some like blocks on the turn. Oh man, I wish I blocked the 7x better. I'm just gonna fold. If he's bluffing with like an ace high hand, it's a disaster. So I think I will find some calls with some ace high hands, but with king high, just the chance of him bluffing with an ace high hand would just be too bad. Or what if he has, you know, king 10 of diamonds? That just would be horrible. So yeah, not gonna bluff catch that one. This hand here, I wouldn't hate blocking the turn. Because most of my range that is an overpair or a decent 10 will be betting the flop. So a lot of my range is just really weak. I think we'll float most ace highs here on the flop. This could be getting a little too loose. This is probably into the fold category, especially with the 3. And when I have an ace high this bad on a turn that connects with me pretty well, I don't mind turning it into a bluff. I don't really want to bet 1/3. I don't think it's an efficient size with my hand exactly. And just in general, I think opening for a normal bet here makes the most sense. Having some overbets also makes sense. Yeah, we're pretty out of line already here on table 1. I mean, if I always bluff this combo, I doubt I'd be over bluffing because I can't really have this combo too often. Probably shouldn't even have it on the flop. I'm just going to check it back and lose. I think it's fine, whatever. Yeah, he can have hands like that. That's the problem with having an ace on the river to bluff. We block too many of his folds. In this ace-6 suited hand, there's like 2 competing factors here in that he doesn't really check back the flop with too many strong hands either. So we're on the turn with both of our ranges being a little bit weaker. 3s, I feel I could even call here, but I'm gonna make the fold. Wouldn't even hate calling 3s in that spot. His bluffs are like queen high and king high that don't have a 3 usually, although he can have king 3 suited and queen 3 suited, which would probably take that line. Like if he has queen 3 of hearts or king 3 of hearts or king 3 of clubs or queen 3 of clubs, I could see him taking this line pure. Roll a call with the 2s. And I think I have enough pairs, as in river jacks, even a 7, a 5, a 9 are all going to be better calls than 3s here, I think. I just think the spot potentially could be overbluffed, but yeah, not going to go too much into that. And I don't think we get to barrel this board very often. However, this is a candidate hand to bet this flop. I just think it gets in there low frequency. So unless I roll a really high number, I'm not going to bet the flop with this hand. and just an easy fold on the turn. Gonna start with a range check on table 1. Potentially check raise. However, with these tighter positions, we don't need to be as creative with our check raises, and we just are more blocker oriented. And what that means is we'll check raise, bluff with a hand like 6-7, rather than these hands that have backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. Table 1, we roll a check back here. And table 2, I don't think we just pure bluff all our random spaz air. So on a 1, I'm going to check and give this one up. We'll be bluffing rivers, I think, most of the time with this class, because it's basically one of our worst hands now. And even though I roll a 9 here, I don't think we check back many straights. I think we check back some flushes to protect. You could consider reopening for a third there. And here, yeah, we're just gonna bet. I think block is our preferred size. We want to be blocking hands like ace king for value. We want to be blocking any pair. This is to get him to fold ace highs. Maybe you could argue that people just don't fold ace highs versus this line. I don't really think like that. I just think of what my range and my hand wants to do. And I know that when I get here, I'm going to be value betting, I think, ace queen for a block size. And also we can get him to fold better king highs when we have this type of hand class. And if he did double check back a hand worse than mine, if I check, he is going to bluff it, I'm assuming. So it's not like my hand has any showdown value if we're going to just check fold. And I think check calling is a little bit too unreasonable. We can maybe check down a hand like king 9 or king jack. Checking range in the spot, table 2. I don't hate the idea of being unbalanced and just betting kind of value oriented with a weaker player in the hand. However, I don't really do that. I don't hate it though. Five three of hearts, well, it does have nice, relatively nice unblockers to the hands that he can fold. I don't even know if that's true, actually. It's just too low equity to do anything with on the turn. Could bluff the river sometimes on table 2. The problem in that spot is I think the big blind is really incentivized to bluff catch that spot more so than he is to bet for value himself. As the weaker player, usually they overbet their value hand, so when they check back here, they're extremely weak. So if the big blind was not in the pot, I think that it would be a really good bluffing opportunity. However, with the big blind in the pot, I do think Nabsu is a good thinking reg. So I think he can realize that he should be mostly bluff catching even when he does have a very strong hand. And here versus the 1/5, we'll go for the small raise. I think the small raise is the preferred size here. Regardless, it's because most of his folding range is inelastic. If he has a hand like king 5 suited, I think he has to fold no matter what raise size I choose. So it's just more of an efficient raise size, and we don't get to raise this board very much anyways. Even 6s can call sometimes on the flop, but yeah. The turn is close. I roll a 36, and I think with a 36 we will check. A lot of his continuing range is still a 6, and we kind of weight him more towards bluffs. And the turn is really close again. I think if we do check sixes, now when he reopens, I don't think he's going to reopen many sixes. So I think check raising makes more sense here. And I'm going to use a big size. That's what I would use with my bluffs. What I would use if I did, check raise the flop with a hand like 4-5 and then roll a call. Roll a check on the turn. Or if I did have a hand like, a 6x or a 2x, like, ace 2. I think this is the size I would use. We'll check on table 2, and we're going to go all in here. I think most of his range is a queen. I don't know if this is the preferred size, if this is even allowed, but I'm fine with when I have exactly pocket sixes going all in. I think it's totally fine in that line, especially with the 6 of clubs where we don't block his 6x of clubs hands. We're basically saying we have a strong queen or a full house anyways when we check raise the turn there. We're going to fold the ace queen off this deep. I think it's a bit of a punt, actually, on the river. I think we're going to check call on table 2. I bet small on the flop. You can float us with tons of hands. Yeah, this is getting less attractive. We block 9-10. The 9 of clubs is good, but is it good versus a recreational? I'm not sure. We roll a 90. We're going to make the call. I don't think a queen bets this, so yeah. The jack 6 off is actually really close versus min raise, or at least like slightly over min raise. I'll make the fold with the rake. So the thing here, the 6 is like when you have a queen, you don't really want to jam the river, because when you have a queen, it's much less likely that your opponent has a queen to call you with. And if you jam the river, the only hands he really needs to call you with is a queen. And when you have pocket sixes, you don't block a queen. So jamming the river becomes pretty attractive with pocket sixes. The problem here is that, so I have to carve out a size just for sixes, and then I need a size for my queens, and which bluffs go into which category. I think having a 2 just going into the jam category can make some sense. And then if I do have a Broadway type hand that blocks the queen X that had clubs that we're going to check raise the turn, or just mixing my 2X between both sizes. Roll a check back here on table 1. That's just a big fancy way of saying, like, I'm aware that my only value hand to jam here would be sixes or maybe 2s. So yeah, we need some bluffs in that line as well. Easy call. I don't think we want to raise with 7s here. It's interesting he chooses the normal bet here. I do know this player uses overbets as well. Maybe he's just simplifying to using a one-size strategy on the turn, but I think it probably weights his range more towards like 9x. And then when he bets the river again, this is very indicative of like a 9x hand. And I'm going to raise, but not too huge. I do have 7x like the hand I have here, but overall he has a straight advantage, including a 7-8 advantage. What I'm thinking in this spot, though, is that he loses a lot of his 7-8 advantage when that size happens on the turn if he's splitting. But that's a pretty big assumption. If he's just using a one-size strategy, then he can definitely still have more 7-8 than me. Considering that he's going to be never leading the flop and I'll be betting some 7-8, then he gets to the turn. When he bets, I'll be raising some 7-8. So yeah, he definitely has more than me. If this was like 9-8-4, I would like checking the king 4 back. But when it's 8-8-4, we need protection. Because if he does have a hand like king jack, and a king or a jack comes, he now beats us. We'll call with the jacks here on table 1. We'd be in a really tough spot here with the 7s if he went all in on the river, to be honest. I think I'd have to mostly call with exactly pocket 7s. And table 1, we'll check back. I don't think we want to reopen many of this type of hand class. We mainly lose to kings and queens here. He needs to be checking this board a lot. You know, versus this size, we're almost getting the right price to draw to our set. We have the flush blocker. I don't think we can fold versus this size. Again, we're mainly just losing to weaker ace-x and kings and queens. If the river goes check, I think we mainly lose. Now I'm tempted to bluff catch, actually. If he had a hand like the jack of clubs, like king jack of clubs, he'd be more inclined to bet the flop than check the flop. And when it goes in this line, his bluffs are like king queen of hearts and random stuff like that. And I rolled 100, so I'm just going to throw in the low frequency call. Yeah. It's a weird spot where I'm thinking like, if he checks, we're always losing, and if he bets, we're good. You know, at least some of the time. Because his bluffs are going to be again like those random king highs or queen highs, or these like low. Because he 3-bet from the big blind, he can have a hand like 6-8 suited, low frequency, or 7-8 suited like he had here. And table 2, we'll check with our king X. I thought I called already on table 1. Slowly losing my mind. So his main calling range on the river here on table 2 after it goes check down like this is a rivered 8, a 9, or a hand like jacks 10s. So I think when we have a king, especially a king with a jack, it's pretty nice to be able to bet this size. Blocking makes a lot of sense as well, but yeah. Check back with the ace 10. In that hand with jacks here in the replayer, if I didn't have the jack of clubs, I think I would be folding the river, at least at a decent frequency. If not just pure. I think the jack of clubs is nice as it just really weights his range more towards bluffs. I don't think we can value bet ace 10. It's super close though. I think I would value bet ace jack because I think ace king is supposed to value bet himself. But being in position, we have to, be more careful. We don't get to value bet as thin when we're in position because then we reopen the action for him to bluff raise us. So maybe I'm just getting kind of out of line there with my ace 10. I think I would value bet ace jack though. Super close. You have the negative side effect of when you're value betting ace high here, the hands that have to call you are ace high. So when you have an ace, you block him from having an ace. We ISO a limp here on table 1. And a pretty good board for my ISOing range. Not that I'm really concerned about range versus range in these spots, to be honest. I wish the ace wasn't open. I think he has just like tons of ace-x suited. I don't really know too much about this player, but some players will limp all their suited ace-x, limp call it here and not raise it. So I think he can still have a lot of those. And I really want to see the river. Probably going to bluff the river if it goes check, check. Going to put in a bet that would make a jack fold. This is a weird size from him. This is kind of like, I don't want to see a raise size. The problem with my hand is that versus weaker players, they can definitely bluff flush draws. And I think a lot of his range can still have like a king 8 suited, king 7 suited, 6-8 suited, and then take this line. So I'm just blocking folds and not really blocking value except for ace-x of hearts. Oh, I'm really tempted to raise that river though. It's not even that credible either, like checking back the turn and then raising the river. I just think he has like queen 10 or king queen a lot that just doesn't want to check, doesn't want to bet bigger. He doesn't really have much ace-x unless it's ace 10 or ace-x of hearts, and we do block ace-x of hearts. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think there's a lot of like very, very strong hands in his range, even though there could be at some frequency. So, you know, putting in a rather large raise might be good there. Just like the worst hand to do it with, I think, in those spots. We're a bit deeper with all three players, but we're even more deeper with the small blind. So we're going to size up our cold 4-bet a little bit, but this is a weird size on table 2. I don't think we get to fold any like middling. Yeah, we don't want to size up too large. Like I still don't mind getting flatted a lot here because I'm in position. So in general, using a smaller size here, especially because the button isn't 200 big blinds deep with us, the button can then 5-bet jam more profitably if I go too large. If I made it like 30 big blinds there or something, we'll fold 4s. Actually, we rolled an 81. Okay, we'll open the 4s. It's a low frequency open for me. And I think I'm going to overbet here on table 2. I think we will check call a lot of flushes on the flop, at least in theory. And yeah, I think this line is absolutely fine. I don't think he bets a lot of hands that have the ace of hearts on it on the flop that are now going to fold the river. I think ace highs even on this board are still mostly going to check back. So we open 4s so infrequently that when we do open it, we mostly call, especially when I rolled 67. And I think we'll check fold the flop versus a reasonable size with 4s no heart. And versus 1/3, we're in a tough spot, but I think we still have to mostly fold. Versus like a half pot, which is what I expect to face here, we're just going to fold. Versus a check back, we will do a decent amount of betting on a lot of turns here. Yeah, so we face the half pot and just going to muck. Same board we talked about earlier, the 10-10X boards, even the 10-10X connected boards, because there exists that pre-flop range asymmetry where I have the advantage in broadways and cards higher than a 10. Well, that is broadways, but you know, 10X and higher. We get to bet a lot on that board, even though it's the flush draw version. There's really not much you can do, even if you wanted to bet like 1/4 with range on that board. I'm not going to play any flats versus a 3 big blind open. And I will be 3-betting this low frequency. On 37, we're just going to fold it. Seems a little tight, a little nitty, and it is, but it's a function of facing the 3x open, there being rake, and us calling cutoff versus button, which means the blinds can squeeze us a lot wider. We'll 3-bet this sometimes, call it. Versus under the gun, we'll be doing slightly more calling than other positions. So we have a double gutter here, one way to the nuts, with the no backdoor flush draw. So when we have an ace, especially the ace of diamonds, we block his hands that are going to check back the flop and fold the turn, but we do roll a 5, and I think on a 5 we do mix, even hands like this. We'll call with the queens here on table 1. And now again, I block his calls. So if I'm going to bet, I want to block. I want to use a small size on table 2. I think he will check back a lot of ace-x. So I'm gonna this is, you can call it an inducing bet if you want to. So if we had one exact hand class that wants to jam the flop, it's queens without a club. We rolled a 55. I don't think I'm playing jams built around any other hand class. To balance this out, we'll have to just jam some ace-king and some flush draws, which I don't think is that hard to find. I don't think min raise when he bets this size with this little left is much of a thing. I think we want to jam or call, mostly call, like vast majority call. And if he has kings or aces, we're getting stacked on any turn anyways. so it doesn't really matter. Well, we got punished for not calling the flop because we would have turned a queen and won the whole pot. Oh well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure how that spot works. When you have queens, you don't want the club here to jam, at least on the flop. Been wrong before in these spots. So aces with the club is, I'm gonna say, a higher frequency check than it is a bet. Again, I could be wrong on that one. So we're just really worried about, like, aces overall is going to be his highest frequency check on the flop here, but even kings is going to check the flop sometimes. And there's just a lot of protection to his ace-king region. In these positions, especially, basically any one of his 4-bet bluffs has at least one over to us. And he can still have jacks and tens at low frequency. So like for that reason, I wouldn't ever jam jacks here, even though jacks requires even more protection, because we don't really get called by worse pairs as much. When we have queens exactly, we can still get called by jacks and like super low frequency 10x, not 10x, tens. Roll a bet here on table 1. Blind versus blind in this spot, I'm going to play 75 or check. You could play over bet or check. You could play 1/3 with range. You could play 1/3 or check. Do whatever the heck you want. I think kings here, I'm going to use a half pot bet with any hand that wants to bet on this board. I think if it was the rainbow version, I'm more inclined to use a larger bet size. And here we roll a check. I actually think I have a hand that wants to mainly bet, and I think we do want to be using mostly a 1/3 size, and it is built around straights, flushes, sets, 2 pairs. We're not really betting too much after we big bet the flop with like ace king, unless it has the king of spades. I think my combo, even though I rolled super low, is going to be betting. This is going to be a fun spot here. 200 big blinds deep, I'm not sure, but I think we still want to 3-bet, especially when we don't have the king of diamonds. I think 200 big blinds deep, well, I guess it was like 170 big blinds deep. It's still good enough to get it in on the flop. He's going to be check raising with 10x, 7x, 4x, tons of flush draws, straight draws, even a hand like pocket jacks that call just because we're deep can go for this small min raise on the flop. Yeah, and we just get it in. Not that happy now, but is what it is. If we never 3-bet him there, so like, I don't know if this is true actually, because I've seen some spots where I used to think that, but we still just never 3-bet. But if we never 3-bet, he just gets to over-realize with that like tiny little raise, which maybe isn't like the worst thing in the world. We'll float 1 here on table 1. This is really close, but with the ace of diamonds, queen of clubs, we'll float at least 1. It's a really bad board, so we get to overfold, and he bet half pot. If I had like ace queen, no backdoor, I would fold the flop is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I ever have to bluff this one. Like if a club rolls off, maybe I do have to turn into a bluff sometimes. But in this line, he still has ace 10, ace jack. I think he might just simplify to like betting half pot with his range on the flop instead of 1/3. I don't think I should read too much into him betting half pot. So yeah, I think we just check it down and lose to a decent amount of hands. We're not in a fun spot, table 1. He still has tons of bluffs though. Yeah, okay. I think we actually start folding ace queen on the turn here versus pot, at least some of the time. And on a 53, I think we fold. I think it becomes more of like a low frequency call in this line. Just drawing dead versus the value region is not good. We'd rather call queen 10, queen 9 than ace queen. Like king queen and ace queen go down in value, where like queen 10 and queen 9 go up in value. We have both equally, so we might as well start folding the worst queens. In this case, ace queen is worse than queen 10. I don't think he's allowed to bet ace queen on the turn for value, is the other thing. If I'm wrong about that, then this is never a fold. So hopefully I'm not wrong about that. I think big blind versus cutoff, he's not allowed to do that. So first of all, he doesn't have as much ace-queen pre-flop, because ace-queen suited is going to be a pure 3-bet. Ace-queen off is going to be a medium frequency 3-bet. And when he does check raise the flop, so first of all, he doesn't get to check raise the flop that much with ace-queen here. I think it'll be built around having the ace of clubs. But if he does check raise the flop and he gets this brick turn, I don't know if he is allowed to bet ace-queen on the turn. Yeah, that one's interesting. Definitely interesting. My guess is he's not, and that's why I folded. If the flop was queen jack 7 with the 2 brick, then I would never be folding ace queen on the turn there. No reason not to just bet range on this board, I think. You can carve out the small checking range if you want to. You can also play big better check, but when you're specifically button versus big blind, I think it makes more sense just to leverage your advantage and really punish his disadvantage. And his disadvantage on that board is all that junky air that he got to profitably call pre-flop. If you were like big blind versus under the gun, then having big better check on that board actually makes some sense. Really, though, it's like you can do whatever the heck you want. On most flops, you can basically do whatever you want, as long as you know how to play that strategy well. Or you think that your opponents are not playing it well. I'm still thinking about that kings versus 10-9 suited hand. And I don't know how true it is, but 200 big blinds deep, I guess he does have to raise a bit more polar in that spot. So he has less hands like jacks and ace 10, maybe. And if he has less hands like jacks and ace 10, then 3-betting a hand like kings doesn't make as much sense, because there's less value in it. And again, like you're flipping versus his combo draw region. So maybe in that spot in general, I know we're not going to play many 3-bets. I just thought that kings would be the hand that builds some 3-bets around, because when you're 200 big blinds deep, he can have queens, he can have jacks. He's not going to be 4-betting those pure. Yes, he can have 10s too. 7s, 4s, of course. Roll a check back here on table 1. He has the 7x advantage, but I have the everything else advantage. This hand class, I don't think benefits enough from protection to justify betting the turn, considering how often we're ahead. And table 1 on a 28 versus the very, very large 4-bet, we're just going to fold. Interesting spot here on table 2. I think we do have to call some ace highs. So his 9x hands are going to mainly bet the turn. Like if he has 9-8 or 9-6 or 9-10, I think those mainly bet the turn. So we do block his jack-x off, which we want to, and we block his ace-x off, and he never bluffs with an ace, so I don't mind calling here. Yeah, the 7x region isn't the region that I was worried about blocking, to be honest. I think that his 7x are going to mostly bet the turn, but you'll have some, of course. And then on the river, he gets to overbet his 7x region, because I'm not going to raise him with anything that's not a jack, so he gets the max value from that. Whereas if he blocks with the jack, I might raise him with the 7. So maybe I should have been more concerned about blocking his 7x region. But I mean, both my cards block his 7x region. Like a lot of things block the 7x region. I still think the 9 is good on blocking a lot of his bluffs. Because if he does have a hand like... The only bluffs that contain a 9 on the river that he's going to bet are like Queen 9, I think. Because King 9 has enough showdown value. Even Queen 9 is like close between having enough showdown value. So if he does have a hand like 9-10 or 9-8 or like I said 9-6, those are going to bet the turn at least some frequency. I guess 9... he doesn't really have 9-4 suited with my open raise size. So yeah, I still don't mind my call here. I think it's fine, at least at some frequency. Roll a raise here on table 2. We're going to raise kind of polar from the big blind versus the small blind, just like how we 3-bet kind of polar, big blind versus the small blind. Include like some random trashy hands, along with what you could call our value range, which is a little bit more linear. Like every pair, every good like suited Broadway, every suited connector. Pretty good board being deep here in position versus the small blind. I imagine he has to check range on this board, and being 200 big blinds deep, I imagine we get to reopen it a lot more often than 100 big blinds deep. At 100 big blinds deep, you can kind of just stack off with overpairs and not care too much. At 200 big blinds deep, he has to be a little bit more worried. And versus his 3-bet size pre-flop, I have 8-6 suited pure, and he probably never has 8-6 suited. At least he shouldn't. Roll a call here with the queens, button versus big blind. We're going to be mostly 4-betting this, call it low frequency. And I think we're going to be checking back 8s, potentially value betting the river. Now we're going to be definitely value betting the river. He could still have 9s, but otherwise we basically just have the nuts, of course. I'm not going to play any raises on the mono board here on table 2, even though my hand is a hand that potentially wants to raise. I think I'm going to overbet on table 2 because the thinnest we want to bet here for value is a straight or a flush, and I think all of those are good enough to overbet. He's kind of screwed in this spot, to be honest. We roll an 11. However, I think queens wants to reopen here. We get jammed on by like jacks and 10s and 9s, which is really good. So we're just going to bet call with queens. I mean, we also get jammed on by kings and aces sometimes, but... This is interesting now. How much ace-x do I have in my range that isn't just like... I was going to say like a lead from him wouldn't be unreasonable on this card, and then I was thinking I'd be in a really tough spot. So he doesn't get to really call ace-king, ace-queen, no heart on the turn. However, I think I have enough ace-x to dissuade him from calling with jacks, 10s, and 9s that there's no value in betting queens. Even though I think I mostly just have the best hand especially after he checks the turn. The river, I mean. Sorry. After he doesn't lead the river, I think I do have the best hand a decent amount of the time. We don't get to do a lot of raising on this board versus big bet because he's just saying he has an overpair advantage and we're saying we're kind of screwed. We have some sets that want to raise sometimes, but even like these hands that need protection just can't raise. And we can't really lead the turn either. So yeah, like I have ace-4 suited. Even hands that like are ace-5 suited, ace-8 suited, ace-3 suited, ace-7 suited, they might reopen the turn some of the time. And then I have all of those like random offsuit combos like ace-jack off. We're going to fold here versus the larger raise size. And this is a GTO call that I'm not happy about on table 1. Because we're just check folding most rivers. I mean, we could check call, but I mean, it's like Not a good spot. Not a good spot to check call. Like, just check calling turn to realize my equity is not going to be profitable. Yeah, that was kind of thin from him. That was kind of thin. Just exactly targeting the types of hands that I have. So if I know he's doing that, then he's going to be weighted more towards this type of thin bet. And we can even fold these hands. We have 9 outs versus an overpair without a spade, but sorry, we have 11 outs versus an overpair without a spade. Because we can hit a 9 as well. Yeah, that spot was not fun. Betting small accomplishes a lot here on table 1, I think. Ooh. Man, that's a big raise. It really does feel like an ace-x that's kind of scared, and we're not doing very well versus an ace-x. We're not even doing very well versus the hands we are ahead against. So I'm going to fold this and be very unhappy. So if I know that a player like that is check raising those types of boards, especially to larger sizes, then I'll stop just betting 1/3 frequently. We could raise the queen 3 off some of the time here. On 49, we'll just check. Looks like I'm lagging, which is not good. Or PokerStars is lagging. We'll reopen some of our 3x on the flop some of the time. I think they're all going to be relatively medium frequency. I think on a 24 and with a queen, as in like we can hit a queen and he can have better queens, or at least a hand like queen 5, queen 6. Roll a 4-bet here on table 1. I don't really know why I have this player marked as a recreational. But it doesn't matter. This hand gets into the 4-bet range on 65. Folding to a jam, of course. Pretty good spot for me with ace-jack here specifically. He should never really flat queens and kings pre-flop, and I block aces, even though he can flat aces pure. So he has a lot of jack-x that are worse than me, and then pairs that are worse than me. And because I have a marked, because we're a little bit deeper as well, I'm going to bet 1/3. This is a board where usually we just kind of bet very frequently for a bit of a smaller size, saying that we have, the overpair advantage. I don't know how much the flush draw version changes that, but it can't be that drastic that 1/3 all of a sudden will be bad. Checking back my hand could be a thing as well. To allow him to hit an ace when he has a hand like ace-5 suited that didn't jam pre-flop, or a hand like, even ace-queen off or ace-king off if he's playing some flats with those pre-flop, which he shouldn't really be. I basically just have the nuts here unless he has aces. I guess 8s or 6s as well. Just deciding what I should do. What size I should bet. I don't think this is a thing. I'm trying to get him to jam his pairs. If you're here with like 9s and 7s, yeah, okay. I think he has enough queen jack suited, king jack suited, pocket 9s, pocket 10s, that we're still going to be jamming this river on table 1. Have to fold versus the 5x pot overbet or whatever that was. Our bluffs are like, the king, the random king x suited, the random queen x suited. I think ace king still bluffs this river if it has the good jack x blockers, or ace queen off at least. Ace 10 off we have to bluff. Some of these hands you just have to find bets on the turn at some frequency. And then our value is going to be probably ace jack plus. I think king jack is a little thin because king jack, while is like the fact that you lose to ace jack and the fact that you don't block aces, which he has probably at close to full frequency, is enough to make it check back, I think. Yeah, I don't think we ever have to turn a pair into a bluff here in this 4-bet pot. See, I think we just choose from our like ace 10 off, ace queen off, ace king off that did bet the turn that now block his jack X and don't have a heart. And I think we shove those. Like maybe ace king gets checked back here and we have enough bluffs in the other region. And ace king has like enough showdown value to win versus a hand like even queen 10 of diamonds or like king queen of hearts. That could be a thing, I guess. I don't know. Or even, you know, when he does have those ace high, like ace 5 suited that didn't jam pre or something like that. We can raise sometimes, call sometimes. That's what we'll be doing. It's a pretty good board for the button. And we don't get to raise that often here because we 3-bet 9s pre, almost pure. We 3-bet jacks pure. We 3-bet jack 9 suited pure. We 3-bet a lot of our good jacks. He has queens, kings, aces. We don't. He has a Broadway. What's the right word? I was going to say condensation, but that means water. Like he's condensed more around the Broadway region than we are. We're more dispersed in our range. That one's close. With the rake, I think we fold it. So we'll check sometimes just, I guess, to essentially have the nuts in our range. But when we have the straights, it's nice to bet because we don't block any of his pairs that can call us. In that spot, it's more relevant just to check it to have the nuts in your range some of the time. So when we check, he just can't jam all of his value. And I've been going for a little bit here, and it looks like Stars or myself is lagging. So I think that's a good time to wrap this up. I don't want to get into a big pot and then disconnect. That's very tilting. So yeah, that's going to be it for this one. We'll play this last hand. And we get it through. Okay. Take care.